Every day, I wake up with great expectation that when I turn on the news, COVID-19 will not be the topic of conversation. Unfortunately, that has not occurred as of yet. I push past my fears and anxieties and start my workday. I trust that my family members will be safe and that they will wear their masks. I tell them to be safe in their travels. Without fail, every week I receive a call from a family member or friend saying, guess who has COVID-19 and is in the hospital. It is so heartbreaking and frightening. I still have unanswered questions about the COVID-19 virus and vaccine, as I am sure you do as well. To help me answer those questions, today I will be speaking with Dr. Linda Berry, Associate Professor, Director of Office, Multicultural and Community Affairs, Department of Surgery, Department of Public Health Science of UConn School of Medicine. Welcome to the show, Dr. Berry. Dr. Berry, what are the ABCs of the COVID-19 virus and vaccine?
Well, I think that's a good way to start the conversation. What is the COVID-19 vaccine? It's known as, for medical terms, a coronavirus. And, it was presumed that it originated maybe from a bat or some other creature, and it jumped between different species and then entered the human population. And this virus is spread through respiratory droplets. So it's an airborne virus. And it tends to attach to the upper airways. And that is why it's so contagious, because if you cough, you sneeze, the major viral load is right in the upper airway. And I think in that context, it's actually not a unique premise. There have been coronavirus infections in the past. There are at least 4 that cause a common cold. But this one is a new variant that clearly has created a worldwide pandemic and more severe illness. So right now we have a couple of vaccines that are on the market. I'm going to mainly talk about the ones that are available for Americans. We have the Moderna vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. You may have heard of the AstraZeneca one, but that has not been approved for use in the United States. The Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine are both what we call mRNA vaccines. So they took a protein that was similar to the protein that's the most infectious part of the coronavirus, COVID-19. And that was able to be replicated in a lab, but it's inactive. The way we used to do vaccine is that we take a weakened virus and we attach it to a special kind of arrow, and we inject it so it'll boost your cells to create antibodies. Now, this mRNA in a vaccine is one of the reasons why you have to have 2 doses, and it is something that you have to get once it's defrosted, is because that mRNA is a very fragile protein, and it requires sub-zero temperatures to maintain. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine was made through the more traditional way of a weakened virus. And so that is why it can be stored at room temperature, and also it's a 1 dose. So I think for a lot of people who don't like vaccines and you have to wait 28 days, they feel that a Johnson & Johnson vaccine might be the better option. In the beginning and right now, I don't think we're in a situation where many people have a choice. It's like, what is available to you at the nearest location? And we're at the stage now where you should take what's available. And that is the main thing that we need to address, is that all of these people who were infected were becoming hospitalized and dying.
Now, how did the vaccine come out so quickly as opposed to the other vaccines and the years it takes for them to be approved?
So, quiet as it's kept, coronavirus, this is, I told you, a part of a family called coronaviruses. So they've been actually doing research on this for a long time. And there were 2 major, they were not pandemics, they were epidemics. So they were very regional, but I don't know if people remember, there was the SARS, which was severe acute respiratory virus. And then there was MERS, which was called a Middle Eastern respiratory virus. And those were coronaviruses. um,
Mm,
were similar. And so they've been working all this time in the lab, looking at these different types of viruses in order to see, in preparation for the next pandemic. And
mm,
so, and this new technology was already being revolutionized all along. It's just not in the lay media and we didn't know about it. So when this happened, yes, things were supercharged. And you also have to think about it. Most times it's one or two people working on this. They had people in multiple countries, in multiple laboratories across the entire country and the world, all working on the same thing. When you have that intellectual might, you can generate this kind, and they're sharing, they weren't as proprietary as we have been in the past. And so I think all these things came across to the public as being fast, but it really wasn't. And I just want to give a shout out to in at NEH there's actually a Black woman. Her name is Kizmikia Corbett Scott, and she was the lead investigator who works with Dr. Fauci at NIH, focusing on the Moderna vaccine. So
that's wonderful.
she's been working on this for a while.
That's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful information to know. So, Dr. Barry, is it safe for people to donate blood during the COVID-19 pandemic?
So that's an interesting question. So are you asking, is there a risk to the patient to get it if they go to a site or during the process in some way? Is that the thrust of your question?
Yes.
Well, no. And in fact, we always have a shortage of blood. And so we want people to donate blood. And there are already protocols that screen blood. We already do it for infectious disease such as HIV and other disease that can be bloodborne. Remember, COVID is transmitted from a respiratory standpoint. And so you going to a blood donation bank, they are practicing all the safe protocols, 6 feet of distance, and mask wearing and hand hygiene. The key thing about donating blood, which is also important, is that there are people who are infected with COVID and they are donating blood because their plasma has been shown to be potentially a way of treating patients who are acutely ill in the hospital. And so they filter out from the red blood this plasma that is rich in antibodies. And so these antibodies can be infused into another person to help them fight their illness. So in so many different ways, blood transfusion is not just safe. If you've been infected, you have to wait 14 days and be in good health, and they go through a screening, but you could also be helping somebody besides just the blood transfusion in and of itself.
Wow. Okay. Now, how is it that the virus does not affect children like it affects adults?
So that we got to be very careful how we frame that. I think we need to look at it a couple of ways. Number one, children get infected with the virus and can have the same viral load as an adult. But children don't, on a whole, don't seem to develop the most severe symptoms as adults do in percentage in comparison. And it's not quite clear. Some might have suspected that it might be their immune system is immature. And as you grow older, you develop all these different components, your airway and your immune system that triggers an immune response. And that immune response can be hyperdrived in an adult and can lead to them developing these really severe respiratory symptoms and body involvement. Another thing is that kids are like walking petri dishes in a weird way. And so there's some that suspect that they may have been exposed to so many different variants that it doesn't trigger a huge immune response like it does in adults. Children don't travel like adults do. Right. And their space is regulated in a different way than adults are. But that being said, children can get sick, and we need to look out. We're in a weird space. We're learning about this disease every day. So children do get sick, particularly those who have underlying conditions like diabetes or asthma or compromised immune system. And there's a subgroup of children who have gotten like this full body auto-inflammatory sickness. So it's not, and that's the other thing about COVID. It's transmitted respiratory wise, but it can infect beyond your lungs. You know,
Mm,
there have been people who've had clotting syndromes and they've had strokes and they've lost limbs because of lack of blood flow. And so this can present also in children as a huge immune response that that can cause them to be hospitalized. So, you know, children are not totally out of the woods. You
mhm.
know, that's why they should wear masks too. That's why, but because of, and also they can be transmitted, they can transmit to adults. And so, you know, until we get to a stage where children can be vaccinated, it's safe for all of us to wear masks and practice good hygiene and social distancing. So there's good news in the context that trials are going on with Johnson and Johnson and Moderna, looking at vaccination of children from, I think, 12 to 16.
Mhm.
So they do it at age groups and they start at the higher tier because their brains are more fully formed, and therefore you can see whether or not they're responding. I think one other thing is pregnant women are, you know, in the beginning we didn't know, but some, you know, I think the society that oversees it are saying it may be worthwhile to get vaccinated because your antibodies can be transferred to the infant in utero or via breast milk.
Okay. Okay. Being as though there is the vaccines out there, when someone contracts the COVID-19 virus now and they're hospitalized, are there treatments that will keep them from getting on a ventilator or even passing away?
So, you know, no one can guarantee anything, but we've come so far from the beginning. I think, you know, because it was a respiratory illness and people would present acutely with respiratory failure, the instinct was that they would be admitted, put on a ventilator. And if you remember, they were saying we don't have enough ventilating machines.
Mhm.
And since then, I think, you know, the former president was even given like the first innovative drug. Remdesivir has been approved as a way of treating hospitalized patients. They have to be in severe situation in the hospital to receive that treatment, and that has been shown to shorten the severity and length of their symptoms. There's also some what they call monoclonal antibodies. So those are synthetic antibody drugs that can attack that, I told you, that infectious part of the protein. Those are not available widely. You have to be really, really sick, but they are options that have gotten emergency use by the FDA. Another is high dose steroids has been shown to help reduce the length and severity of symptoms. And I think the other thing that has been there's some of these drugs were actually offered before they get in the hospital. So there may be somebody who's at really high risk, who's infected, and I think particularly the monoclonal antibodies that they're offering to some of those select patients to avoid them from getting hospitalized. And then lastly, you know, being in the prone position has been shown to help facilitate respiratory health and improvement. And that was something that was learned along the way and help reduce the likelihood of people being put on ventilators.
So that is good information to know. I know, and you hear people talking about the vaccine and all of this is new to us. We're frightened either way, the virus and the vaccine, because it's the unknown and this is so new to us. I did hear people ask, why is personal information needed when you get the COVID-19 virus? What is the purpose of that?
Me and vaccine.
Vaccine, I'm sorry. Yes, the vaccine.
Okay. Well, let's just think about it. Have we ever gotten any vaccine where they didn't need to know your name, where you are, and what happens? You know, we need to look at this in two ways. This is a public health emergency that we've been living in. It's why you and I are talking on a video rather than in person. And so we need to track, because if there's sudden spike or if someone had a bad reaction or if there's a new covariant, we need to know who that is and understand how that transmitted, right? And in addition, we track, because if you get one of those vaccine that require 2 dose, we need to keep record. Now, you may have heard a lot of controversy with vaccine passports, and I'm not even going to go there. But the point of the matter is, you're going to need that information for travel internationally. Some jobs might require you to do so, particularly if you're working with people who are vulnerable and at risk. And so all this information is not just for, to track for your own health, but as a general public health. So even if you get the flu shot, you go to your CVS, they take your information. When you get, so I think what is interesting is that because this is a new virus, this happened in a way that affects so many people. The things that we which were normal are suddenly being viewed as abnormal. But in reality, vaccines have always been given, and we always document it. It has to go into a medical record. You're getting something that's like a medication. And so we don't give drugs without documenting that you received it, how much, and how you did. And so that is why, for your sake and for the public's sake, it's important. That's how we knew that people can take this vaccine, because we were tracking people, right? And they're still tracking people. Just because the trials are over, we need to make sure that people are doing okay, and we need to know, how long, this immune coverage lasts for people. And so these are all various factors that I think add to the reason why.
Okay. All right. And you spoke about us needing, and it's a requirement for us to be able to meet like this, social media, through Zoom, and we can't sit face to face. Do you ever think we will get back to being normal again?
I would say yes and no. Okay. I think yes, we will, but it depends on the will of the people. You and I are women of color. We're talking about this, and the goal is ideally it would reach those from our community who have misgivings or are hesitant. And I want to say that is fine and okay to have. But what normal looks like is that the vast majority of our population, at least 70 million people plus, get vaccinated. And what is concerning to me is, as different states open up, those who are not vaccinated are at risk. For example, you get vaccinated, you're covered. But for how long? Mm-hmm. This is why people may need a booster shot in 6 months to a year. We don't know how long. We know at least 6 months you have coverage. So if you don't get vaccinated, when that time frame cuts off, you can be at risk of getting this disease again. You may have, and also people like, oh, I got it, I survived. We don't know how long your natural antibodies last. Everybody's different. And so I think a lot of people, and I think from our mental health and our concept of community, we need to get back to normal. For jobs, for our children's health, we need to be able to commune in person again. But I will tell you, there may be a subgroup of us who still don't wear a mask, because you know what also the side benefit? Flus were low this year. Yeah. And I think we realize how people are just not practicing good hygiene. I'm a surgeon and I wash my hands on the regular, but now I am super duper, right? You realize that how much you touch your face and how much we don't wash our hands. And, so I think those things will be different. And a lot of Asian countries have, since they had SARS way, way back, I think it was 2002, they adopted wearing masks. So, these are things that I think will carry on. And the next pandemic is around the corner. And so I think we are all going to be hyper aware now of what that could mean.
And that was actually my next question. Do you think we will have another pandemic like this in the near future? I'll be 50 in November, and I've never seen anything like this. It was like when it first started in March, and you hear all the rumors and you hear everything. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay. And then when I told my staff, okay, listen, we're gonna work from home. I think it was March 18th or March 13th. We're gonna work from home. Just take some work home for about 2 weeks, and then we'll be fine. We're still not that in the office. This is just it's just mind-boggling to me. So for you to say the next pandemic is right around the corner, I think we'll be a little better prepared because it was like going to the market to get the toilet paper and the cat food. It was the shelves were just clear. So I think we'll be better prepared. But you actually think we'll be faced with another pandemic in the near future?
Oh yeah. This is, I think people forget H1N1. That happened in the very beginning of Obama's presidency.
Oh.
And that was a swine flu. And those were from infected pigs. We are, number one, a global community, right? So our borders and our shores are not immune. Ebola came here, okay? And we never cared about Ebola until it came here. We also, climate change is a big deal. I don't think people understand. There are diseases that are carried by insects. When you have change in humidity and temperature, the insect population will change, and the things that they carry will change, right? And also, we are living in tighter and closer spaces. This is, I think, why COVID particularly affected disproportionately people of color. They lived in clusters in urban environments that are densely populated, in multi-generational homes, in congregate settings. And so it is inevitable that it will happen again, right? But the thing is, I think there were safeguards in place that were dismantled during the last administration. We had a rapid response pandemic unit in China that was dismantled so that you could be on the ground to see, because a lot of and it wasn't just in that country, they were in other countries, so they could start looking to see what new things are on the horizon. And one of the things I had read recently is that we could have a pandemic or epidemic that's within here from bacterial resistant organisms. So we just need to be hyper aware of how we need to take care of ourselves. Don't ever blow off the sniffles, because clearly in the beginning the flu and COVID had similar symptoms, right? And so for my job, they required us to take the flu shot. They never required it because we needed to make sure we didn't have COVID.
Right.
And so I think, we have often, and I think a lot of the people who are getting it may not have been someone and so we can be oblivious to what's going on in the world. But now we know. Now we know it can come into our homes and affect our loved ones. And so I think we just need to be more engaged in things like this and keep abreast of what's going on around the world.
I agree. And Dr. Berry, I have the opportunity to go to Florida in September. I am scared out of my mind. I'm scared to get on the plane. I'm scared to go somewhere else. I'm in Philadelphia. Do you think it's safe for people to travel and to be able to go somewhere on vacation, still be safe and not contract the COVID-19 virus?
Well, there are a lot of dependent factors here. Are you vaccinated? If you're not vaccinated and you're going into a place that, listen, the hotspots right now are Florida and Michigan. I ain't going to Florida and Michigan. I'm just telling you, because, I didn't go through all of this for a year. And then the first time I step on the beach, I get COVID.
Right.
So if you're, CDC has put out guidance that if you've been vaccinated and you've gotten both doses, and I think it has to be at least 2 weeks post-vaccination, travel is acceptable.
Okay.
But let's be clear, you got to also think, one of the things about this disease to me are the politics of empathy. If you don't know someone or you haven't gotten it or you're not treating patients, you can go through this whole lockdown and not understand the depth and breadth of this pandemic. It
Right.
happens behind closed doors. So if that is the case, you're vaccinated. That doesn't mean, like, we're still trying to learn if it keeps you from getting
Mhm.
the actual infection. Because what it means is that you may get it, but your body can fight it off quicker. That does not
Mhm.
mean you might not give it to your grandma or to the waiter.
Right.
And this
Right.
is the problem with some states, like my own in Connecticut, that use age as a criteria. Because when you did that, all the older people were vaccinated, but who were the frontline workers? Who were the
Right.
essential workers? They were the younger people who are in a restaurant being exposed because people can't eat without a mask. And so
Mm.
I do think vaccination is the key thing. Now, some people have to travel for emergency reasons. I will
Mhm.
say double mask.
Okay.
I don't think one mask is sufficient. I'm a surgeon. And all this nonsense mask. I'm a surgeon. I've been wearing masks for like 20 something years. Give me a break. Um, but I think the benefit of double mask is because these covariants are have higher density of virus in the droplets, and they hang in the air for. Before it was like, oh, it's supposed to hang in the air for like maybe 6 minutes, an hour or whatever. Now they're smaller volume, denser amount of particles in the air. That's why people are encouraged to be in ventilated spaces and be outside, right? And so I just think the double masking adds an extra layer for these covariants because they are affecting children more. They're affecting younger people more. In Michigan, more people who are younger are being hospitalized with severe complications from COVID.
Okay. Well, Dr. Barry, you've answered my question. I will tell my husband I will receive my award remotely. I am not going to Florida. I will have to play some other time. I do thank you so much for all of the knowledge. I thank you so much, Dr. Berry, for coming on to the show. I appreciate you. And hopefully a lot of questions were answered that was lingering around in people's minds, especially mine. Thank you so much for joining me today, Dr. Berry.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me today. The COVID-19 virus has rocked all of our world. Hopefully, we will be able to get back to meeting each other face to face, to seeing each other face to face, and loving each other face to face. My condolences to all the family members and loved ones who has lost someone special to the COVID-19 virus. We will get through this together, and I am hopeful and prayerful that a brighter day is coming. Thank you for joining me today. Peace and blessing.